So, hello there. It looks like we were not live. I was talking for a while to myself. We're going to go back a little bit and start this over. So, unraveling neurodevelopmental disorders. What does this mean? Unraveling, all right? It's like something that's all twisted up, tied up, and this is what we feel with our kids' brains and our lives seem to be all tied up. And so we want to unravel that for autism, dyslexia, ADHD, learning disabilities. A little bit about me. I'm a family chiropractor since 1996, so we're going on almost 30 years now. My focus has always been nervous system health and chronic health conditions, and so that ties in really well with this neurodevelopmental disorders. And a chiropractic neurologist, board certified since 2007. What is that? So chiropractic neurologist as opposed to a medical neurologist. Medical neurology would focus on infection, disease, and trauma, and chiropractic neurology would look at how can we restore brain function naturally when there's not infection, disease, or trauma. There's just not working right. It's not normal. It's not a disease. It's in a state of dis-ease, just not right. And then certified in functional medicine, this is where we use lab testing for functional deficiencies, toxicities, deficiencies, gut health problems, malabsorption, things like that. And we use nutrition, lifestyle, supplementation to restore that function. And lecturer and member of the Interdisciplinary Association of Functional Neurology and Rehabilitation. So what is that? Well, that's where a bunch of different types of practitioners get together and we go, how can we use the nervous system to restore function for many different disorders? And we try to learn from each other, help each other out. The reason we get such amazing results in our office is because we have a different approach. And it's characterized by this term salutogenesis. I'll let you look at this up close. So it comes from a Latin word saluto, which is Latin for health, and genesis, which is the creation of. So it's the creation of health. No amount of focusing on disease is ever going to teach us how to is never going to teach you how to get healthy. So we want to focus on factors that create health in your body, and that helps you to recover. So that's what we do. All right, so the reason any of us are involved in this is because of changed lives. So I'm going to share a story with you about Gabriel. This is his mom sharing. When Gabriel first came to see Dr. Hobbs, he was having trouble sleeping and staying focused. The treatment he received included various brain exercises, spinal adjustments to help his brain and nervous system connection. With this treatment, Gabriel seems more mature and aware of things that will harm him. And we see that with a lot of kids, and you may see that with your kid, where they're just not aware of things that will harm them, whether it be interactions socially or interactions physically with their environment. They just don't seem to get it, and then they get themselves in trouble. So he was starting to get it. He can maintain focus for longer periods of time, maintain interest, and stay on topic. He's even sleeping. He no longer needs melatonin. He can put himself to sleep. He even seems to get tired, which he has never been able to do on his own. In addition, his eating habits have improved. He has less of an appetite and less need for snacks. His self-control towards food prior to starting eating was ravenous. His eczema on his arms is reduced, but still has some bumps. And most recently, during his IP triennial review, ADD was removed because he can self-regulate and is no longer impairing his learning. He's reading at grade level and has made so much progress. This is really a classic. What we're going to talk about tonight, this wasn't just an ADD diagnosis. This was a whole health, whole body, whole system dysfunction. And that's what we're seeing in our society, is not just the end result of one function being disturbed, but it's this whole health that's not right. And so that's how we have to correct the body function, the brain function, to ultimately get the symptoms better, is address the whole health. Accurate feedback. And so this is what Gabriel was not getting. He was not getting accurate feedback. And that's why he couldn't respond accurately to the environment. So we want to restore that accurate feedback. We'll talk a lot about that tonight. Okay, so you can introduce yourself and just kind of tell what we're doing with your son, as far as you know, your experience that has been so far before you came here, and then now, just in brief. We'll go into more later. We just started therapy, but
yeah. Okay, so my name's Michael, and Logan's my son. We've been here for about a month now, I'd say. And
yeah, you missed a few visits, so we just
yeah, we did. But no, we really enjoy being here. We love So we used to go all the way to San Ramon area to do visits with the doctor over there. But then we found you, and we love that it's similar, but almost, I would say better in a way where Logan is able to, I think he just resonates with you, and he loves coming here. Like, it was kind of hard at first, but now he loves doing these activities, and I don't know, I've seen a lot of improvement.
So what kind of things have you seen change?
Fine motor skills, like him being able to Lego sets for him at home. He's kind of struggled with grabbing pieces and then connecting them. But now he's actually grabbing them and putting them together really well, like the small pieces. I feel like that kind of happened after being here.
Okay, yeah. And your mom said interactions with the siblings changed.
Yes. So this tied in with screen time. So we took away screen time for like a week of no screens, and I think that paired with this was it's a game changer.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, we love it.
So let's talk about something that happened today in the office. So he was doing the we call it the object find. He was going in a container of little beans and trying to find little objects. And he was having trouble. He'd done it before, he'd done it pretty well, and today he just couldn't find anything.
Yeah, and then he asked for the glasses. I was like, what glasses? And I remember the ones with the little blue lights.
Yep. And they stimulate. We set them so they do one field of vision activation, and so they activate a certain part of the brain. And then what was his experience after putting the glasses?
He found it seconds after putting the glasses on.
And was that just kind of a fluke, or did that?
No. Why is that? What does that do? I don't understand.
Yeah, so we're activating. He's got an area. When we did the full exam, we're trying to find out what areas are diminished in activity or imbalance in the brain. And this is a way to stimulate. So we just test and see. And sometimes it's auditory, sometimes it's visual. We activate the right part of the brain, the correct part of the brain, and then it's like priming the pump. Just kind of getting a car started, and it rolls a lot easier once you get going. So we're stimulating that part of the brain and allowing it to work better.
That's interesting. Yeah, I can't believe it. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
All right, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so a couple stories. That's why we do what we do. I'm going to talk to you tonight about how we do that, some of the causes, etc. So let's talk about what's going on with these kids and how is this happening. Tonight we'll use information that comes from books and from reference journals. So none of this is just my opinion. If I'm going to share something that's just my opinion, then I'll make sure I let you know. But this comes from references and research. So a little bit about my story. This is me when I was about 9 years old with my brothers. And so I was living up in Colorado, loving life. Things were fun, enjoyable. I was in the mountains, and everything was great until it wasn't. This is me in the hospital. So I was about the same age, and I spent a lot of time in bed sick. I spent 2 Christmases in bed, 1 Christmas in the hospital. And that's how often I was sick. And I still remember one of the presents I got. And look at that, they're giving me some great nutritious 7-Up to get me well. So they were treating me nicely. Looked like I might have had some breathing treatments. I think it was a croup virus. But I spent a lot of time sick. And eventually my chronic sickness led to chronic learning disability. So this is a stack of books. I was not able to finish a chapter of a book until I was a freshman in college. That's the first time I remember finishing a chapter of a book. And it was, it was shocking to me that I got to the last page of the chapter. Not the last page of the book, just the last page of the chapter without falling asleep. So it was pretty amazing. And so I've taken these problems that I had to deal with, and then that gives me motivation to help other people so they don't have to deal with things as much as I did. This is my son. We're up in the mountains up here, Eagle Lake, I think, and my daughter and my dog and my wife. So we like to enjoy life. So tonight we're going to talk about what's the present state of the condition. So we'll go through some statistics. We'll go through that pretty quickly. We'll talk about why this problem's here. What is the cause? And then most importantly, what are the solutions? Autism. 1 in 36. I think it's now to 1 in 31. It just keeps going down. In 1970, it was 1 in 10,000. And now it's 1 in 36 as of 2020. That's crazy. And Dr. Thomas Insel said the burden of proof is upon anybody who feels there is not a real increase here in the number of kids affected. Obviously, there's a real increase. Some people say, oh, it's just more diagnosis. Yes, where there is more diagnosis, but there's also really something happening. What's happening? It's not genetics that are changing any way significantly. Is it the food? Is it vaccines? Is it the lack of PE class in the school? Is it the center of the grocery store has a bunch of trashy food? Is it that kids can't go outside and play because we're all scared that people are going to steal them away? So I'd say the answer is yes. It's all of that. 6 million, that's 9.8% of 3 to 17-year-olds have been diagnosed with ADHD as of 2019. Almost 10% of 3 to 17-year-olds. OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, affects as many as 1 to 4%. That's 2 million children. 1 in every 6.5 of 12 to 17-year-olds have anxiety disorder, probably even more now. And 43% or 34 million of school-age children have at least one of 20 chronic health conditions. And this is what I was talking about at the beginning. It's a whole body disorder. This is not just a symptom of mental behavioral disorder. It's a whole body. These kids are not healthy. And that statistic even includes being overweight, obese, and being at risk for developmental delays. So 43%. Why so many problems with the brain and the body? Where's this coming from? So we have brain problems like ADHD, autism, anxiety, depression, etc. And these we can manifest in different areas of the brain. We can locate some of them where they may be expressed. So what are the solutions for those things? Well, we would do training or parenting, education. Those would be addressing those behavior symptoms, right? Better medications, more targeted vaccines. Scary idea. So what if we're going to address those symptoms? This is where people look. What if we're looking at whole health problems? There's allergies, sensitivities, autoimmune disorders, obesity, infections. What are the solutions for that? Well, maybe better training as far as obesity, right? Don't eat so much food. Maybe it's a better medication, or there's a vaccine for obesity. Or maybe it's something more. Oops. What's something more? If there's both a brain problem and a health problem, maybe there's something more that really is at the root of this, and that's what we're going to look at tonight. Now, when we're looking at a piece of machinery, we're going to make it start simple. We look at like a piece of like a car, right? How do mechanical systems work? What do they need to work? A motor, okay. What else do you need to work? Gasoline, all right. So you got motor is like a part. Gasoline will be the fuel, all right. What else does it need? Needs a driver, all right. So you need some information to tell this thing where to go, when to go. Parts, power, right. So that was the engine and all the other parts. Power, like the fuel, and information. I think you guys got this down. Okay. So what do computer systems need to work? What do they need? What? Wi-Fi, right? Yeah, so the Wi-Fi went down all over the world recently. And parts and power and info. So the Wi-Fi may be like the information, but it needs an operator of the computer, somebody who's going to make it work, right? And you need all the parts for it, the keyboard, and you need the power cord. So yeah, you need parts, power, and information. We're on a trend here. What do living systems need to work properly? Parts, power, and information. All right. Okay. We try to keep this simple here. How do you know if a living system is working properly? So let's say parts. How do you know the parts are working properly? Moving fine. Okay. What else? So that'd be like a joint or a muscle. And what kind of doctor would you go to see if your joints are moving fine? Might go to a chiropractor. What other kind of doctor might? Primary doctor, orthopedist, right? So what other parts do we have that we want to know if they're working right? Your brain, okay. Who would you go to see if your brain's working right? Neurologist, all right. And what other parts do we have? Spine. About your heart and your intestines, right? So all these, we have lots of parts, and there's a doctor for every part these days, right? Go to a gastroenterologist for your intestines, you can go to a cardiologist for your heart, you can go to a nephrologist for your kidney, you can go to a podiatrist for your foot, right? So there's an MD for every type of body, for every body part. And then you have a general MD who's supposed to understand all the parts a little bit, but then refer you to a specialist. And that's generally how we know parts are working right. And then we could fit a chiropractor in there for your spine, or orthopedist in there as well. So what about, whoops, I showed you the answer. What about power? What is the power for the body? It's like food, sleep. Yep. So what kind of doctor helps you with power? Primary doctor. They check your nutrition, hopefully, but not so much, right? A nutritionist, yeah. So they actually have a doctor for that. It's a naturopathic doctor, a doctor of naturopathy. They actually are licensed, I think, in California. Some states have them. Functional medicine doctor, right? So I have a certification in functional medicine. And so we look at that nutrition and digestion and absorption. Are you getting the power into your body the way you need to? Are you well nourished?
Oh.
I give you the answer again. Okay. So now what about information? Who is the information doctor? How do you know if you have the right information flowing through your body?
Functional medicine.
Functional medicine. Okay. So that's like nutrition. And that supports it. And it's like, who does that? So chiropractors do that when they do the adjustment to make sure the nervous system is working well. And as a chiropractic neurologist, and I'm super focused on that, functional neurology, right? And then acupuncture, I'd say acupuncturists fit into that pretty well. They're looking at flow of information. We don't really know where it is or how it gets there, but that's what they're working with. So yeah, so parts, power, and information. Because systems are made of parts, they are all designed to eventually, and I wouldn't say they're designed to, but they do eventually, what happens to them? They break down, yeah. And we might say our phones and some of our cars are actually designed to break down. So our bodies aren't designed to break down, but they do. So what happens if you take away or interfere with the parts, power, information for a plant? Like less light or polluted water or poison in the soil, that would be stress. What if you stress that plant by removing something it needs or adding toxins that it doesn't need? It'll die or get sick, right? You see this plant, it's like, why my plant looks so bad? It's like, I don't know, because I don't know how to take care of plants. You could test the soil, right? You might just know. So it needs parts, power, and information for it to be healthy. What happens if you break down or disturb the parts, power, information for a human being, like less sunlight, less movement, polluted water, food, toxins, etc.? Well, we're going to dysfunction, right? This is just cause and effect, just like it is with a plant. We don't say, oh, that plant needs medication to make it more stiff, right? We should put a brace on that tree because it's starting to get limp. It's like, no, it's like, why is it not nourished? Why is it not working the way it should? Okay, so we need parts, power, and so it's just cause and effect, but we don't often see that with the body. It's like, why are we manifesting? Is the brain manifesting in a distracted or poor behavior or can't socialize appropriately? Why are you getting sick in different ways? There's something that's interfering. Parts, power, information is just not flowing the way it should. Otherwise, we would have a better response. So it's just the cause of stress, physical, chemical, mental, contributing to influencing the body. So to understand the problem, what does your body need for good health? And what So we're going to take an analogy here of a cake. So what does a cake need for good taste? Sugar. I love sugar. I do. Okay, so we need something else in the cake, though. What else we need in the cake? Flour. Okay. Eggs. Anything else? Butter.
A person to mix it.
Person to mix it. All right. So, all right. So we have butter, sugar, flour, eggs, some water or milk, maybe. Okay. And we won't get too fancy, but we could add other stuff, some cocoa or whatever. All right. So I'm going to take these ingredients you've got, and I'm going to mix them together in the cake, in a bowl. So I put the flour in, and then I put the sugar in, because I know you're supposed to put these dry ingredients together. So I'm going to mix them first. I'm super smart. And then I'm going to take the butter and put it on top. And then I'm going to put the water on top as well. And that's it. Any other ingredients? Maybe some yeast, right? Baking soda or something. Baking powder. I might put baking soda. That could be an issue. Okay. And then I take that and I just put it in the oven for, put it on 250 for an hour and a half. I have no idea. And then I pull it out, and are you ready to eat the cake that I just made? Oh, I got to take her. So I didn't mix in the butter, right, or the water. So I have the sugar and the flour mixed together, but yeah, this is not going to be such a good cake, right? And I had the ingredients, right? I had the parts, and I had the power. Did I have the information? What's the information for a good cake? What do we call that? A recipe, right? I didn't have the recipe, or at least I didn't follow it. So this is a lousy cake. Same thing with the body. We can have the parts and the power, but if we don't have the information, this recipe that helps it work right, it's not, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the recipe. The autonomic nervous system is a very complex recipe. So we have a resting, digesting, and repair part of our nervous system. And we have a fight, flight, and freeze part of our nervous system. They're both really important. We don't want to spend time, we want to be able to fight, flee, or freeze. And we want to be able to rest, digest, and repair. So we can't spend all of our time in one or the other. We need this growth and potential, and we need survival. There's a balance in these parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems. And they go and they run different organs and cause them to do different things. For example, parasympathetic nervous system causes the intestines to increase digestive functions, whereas the sympathetic decreases digestive functions. Because if you're fighting or fleeing, you really don't need to be digesting at that point. It's like, let's put that on hold. I'm going to use that blood flow from my muscles and other things. So what causes excess fight or flight in our bodies? Stress. All right, so give me some examples of stress. Work, all right. I don't think work here, but yeah, there's stress. All right, so work is stressful, and that can cause us to go into a fight, flight, or freeze, can accelerate our heart rate, can decrease digestive functions, can inhibit bladder contraction. All right, what's another example of stress? Financial, all right. Yep. So again, it can cause these things to happen. Now, can you flee from that? Well, not very effectively. From your job, can you flee from that? Well, not very effectively. So we have these things that we're just immersed in, and maybe it's chemically, maybe it's bad air or bad food, or physically, maybe it's pain. And so these things cause stress, and then they shut down some of the functions of bladder and reproduction and digestion, increase heart rate, increase respiratory rate. And that's fine if you can, gives you the opportunity to flee from what you were involved in. But if you can't flee it, or you don't flee it, then you just have these things continue to go on, and you're not allowing these things to happen. Repair, digest, and rest. All right, so these are some of the symptoms that may be found with low parasympathetic or high sympathetic activity, and one kind of suppresses the other. So when you have one, you tend to have the other. All sorts of things, right? Constipation, depression, hormonal issues, chronic fatigue, thyroid, adrenal, brain fog, or anxiety, diarrhea, irritability, poor sleep, neurodevelopmental disorders. This is a great little diagram that helps us understand the approach to helping people get well. Conventional model, where does it focus? So we have genetics, we have body system function, and we have the symptom or effect. They have named conditions like autism, ASD, ADHD, dyslexia, and other things named by body parts, gastroesophageal reflux disease or headache, or right. So just named by the body part often. So where is the focus of conventional medicine? Pain. So like with neurodevelopmental disorders, they're looking for pain if it's pain, but it's really the effect, the symptom. In case of neurodevelopmental disorders, they're looking at this name and go, okay, you're not behaving well, or you're not focusing well, or you're not able to socialize. So let's see if we can help make that happen. And it's a good goal, but it's a goal. You don't start there and try to work it backwards. But that's what we do. We diagnose it and then go, okay, so how can we help this symptom improve? And if we improve the symptom, we feel like, hey, then we've won. Right? This is what happens with cholesterol, right? High cholesterol, what should we do? We'll get the cholesterol low. It's like, well, what about heart disease? Like, well, that'll probably improve too. What if it's depression? We help just improve the mood, and that's great. That's a win. But what's going to keep them coming back or creating other problems in the body if we don't address the cause? So let's look at that. A whole body disorder. There's genetics, there's environmental stresses, and then that leads to epigenetics. What is that? Well, remember when they mapped the human genome years back and they thought, oh, once we have the whole genome, then we're going to know everything and we're going to solve all the health problems. And then they realized that really didn't change much because we were like 80% the same as a worm. And it didn't really help, except for all this extra, what they call junk DNA. It turns out that junk DNA and the little decorations on the DNA, which we call epigenetics, those are super, super, super important. Genetics can be changed in, the expression of the genes can be changed. You can't change the genes unless you get CRISPR'd, new technology, but you can change how the genes are expressed. And environmental stress does that. Physical, chemical, and mental stress. That's what influences it's the environment, and that influences your genetic expression, and then that leads to change in body function, which then has an effect, which is more positive, hopefully. It's because we can support this environment physically, chemically, and mentally. And you can do that on your own, and that's really what I want to teach people, is that you can have some power, you can have some control, and then we help you with things that are more difficult. So who's in control? Who's in control of this system? The digestive, the detoxification, the immune system. Who's in control? You are. And what particular system of your body is in control of all those? The nervous system. Yep. Just reading my mail. Okay. So we address the cause, and that corrects this whole body disorder. We focus on the nervous system, but we also focus on these causes. So where should we start? Should we start with the cause, or should we start with the symptom? That's upside down to give you a hint. That's an upside down approach. So we should start with the cause, of course. And treatment involves helping the nervous system rehabilitate, because it's control of everything. And we give you guidance what to do physically, chemically, and mentally. So you support those epigenetics and the functioning of your body. And we give you, and so you make lifestyle changes that actually causes that to happen. Another way of looking at this, a little more briefly, is neurodevelopmental disorder trifecta. So you might have a genetic problem, environmentally induced predisposition. That's something you have a tendency toward. And then, in this case, the gut microbiome, that's the living environment in your gut. Depletion can be caused by multiple triggers. C-sections, antibiotics, medications, inability to breastfeed, stress a lot, because what does stress do? It inhibits the digestive function, which is going to interfere with your bacteria in your gut. Those are really powerful because a leaky gut causes immune problems. 80% of your immune system is in your gastrointestinal tract. So if your gut's not healthy, then nothing else can be maximally healthy. And also, it creates a leaky brain. Really? Yes, really. So your brain is what's called the blood-brain barrier, and it filters things. Things should not get through that are not supposed to get through. Same thing in your gut. So leaky gut means you get stuff into your intestines, from your intestines into your bloodstream that shouldn't be getting in, and they may cause immune responses or sensitivities or allergies. Same thing in your brain. You have things that are in your bloodstream that shouldn't get into your brain, but when you have a leaky gut, you create immune problems that often create a leaky brain, and now you get more inflammation and toxicity in your brain as well. What's the role of the nervous system? These three give you a hint. It's like a sponge. It's receiving information all the time. So it's a receptor. It's learning, it's listening, it's receiving information, and then it filters it out, and it comes with a plan. So that's the nervous system in short. Receives information, processes it, and then sends out a response. There's 100 billion brain neurons, each with 10,000 connections. There's a lot going on in your brain. 50 tasks at once, but you only have one focus. Now, can you imagine if you're somebody who cannot filter very well, and you have all this information coming in, it's not being filtered, you're not getting this information, you're getting this, and your sponge is just overflowing. And this is what a lot of these kids are dealing with. This is why they need to go in an environment where they're not, where they, let's take an autistic child, for example, right? They want to have the same thing happen all the time. They want order, they want clarity, they want predictability. When you throw something new in, their brain has trouble filtering, and now they're getting all sorts of information. So problem is a lack of filtering. This is the party boat on the brain, and this brain is looks super happy because it's got all this information, but it's really overloaded, and yeah, that's what happens with these kids. It's a lack of filtering. So we looked at this earlier and we said, okay, maybe it's something more that's causing these brain problems, these whole body health problems. Perhaps it's a lack of filtering. So safe spaces, what are safe spaces, right? So safe spaces are, we can think of these emotional safe spaces, and that can be really nice and seems to be really helpful, but it's creating a filter by eliminating some of the input, and it helps in the short term, but it's not really fixing anything, right? Accommodations, so anybody who's got a disability may get accommodations, and this helps them to move along and accomplish things. But again, if it's not addressing the problem, it's just reinforcing the problem eventually. High functioning body and brain that adapts to stress well. That's really what we want, is we want to be able to adapt to a stress and not just have, not accommodate or work around or eliminate the stress, whether it be neurological or physical or chemical. So the problem is a lack of map and route. Well, what does that mean? So this is if these boats didn't know where to go, they would probably start running into each other. There's so many boats out here. They need to have a specific route where they decide who goes when, just like road traffic, right? So we have a map and a route. We filter the information that comes in. We make a decision. And then we can have good function. Then we can have training, behavior, or education, right? Learning problems now become less of an issue. Behavior problems become less of an issue when your brain works properly. So the brain needs to mature and accurate nerve pathways. Just like in this water, you need to have accurate pathways for the boats to travel. So how do we get that proper map and route in our brain? So accurate feedback is the first thing. So how do we get that? This is sensory information. This is information that comes from the body to the brain. And if we have accurate feedback, then we have a chance. And that's what we work with is we do our evaluation to find out, are the kids getting accurate feedback? And where is it that we can help restore that feedback so the brain starts receiving proper information, it can start to process it accurately and develop and mature. So we do that with specific activation of nerve pathways. The brain's always being activated, right? We said there's too much activation, there's just no filtering. But if we activate it specifically, then it starts to work properly. Just like if you had a muscle that was weak and you say, well, I exercise all the time, but my muscle is not getting any stronger over here in this injury I had before. It's like, well, maybe your trainer would say, well, let's isolate and exercise that muscle very specifically, and then it can recover. We do the same thing with the brain. It's a specific activation. So accurate feedback then results, so accurate activation, specific activation results in accurate information to the brain, and then it starts to get those pathways that can receive feedback accurately. How do we get accurate feedback? Physical, chemical, and mental, physical, chemical, neurological. So we want to restore that. So how do we do that? Well, let's understand the solution. It takes a village. We can't do everything. We do so much here, right? Nutritionally, neurologically, with chiropractic, we do a lot, but we do not do everything. So we have a doctor in Hanford who does great work with eye rehabilitation exercises, eye movement exercises, super good. There's counselors, there's behavior specialists. So all these are great and are needed, right? We need to have good family support. It takes a village. So we want chemical deficiency, toxicity, dysbiosis. We want proper power. We want proper chemical input. We don't want deficiency, toxicity, or dysbiosis. This is me a few years ago. This is my son a few years ago. All right. So he's now, what, 22 or 3 now? So yeah, it was a while ago. So this was him when he was about my age, when I was sick. This is him, 8 or 9 years old. And you can see those black circles under his eye. Now this boy, at this point, his favorite snack was an apple from the refrigerator. And he did not know that eggs were actually any color other than orange or green after you scrambled them up, because we would grind up carrots or spinach, and that just ended up looking orange or green. So he was super well nourished, at least what he was putting in his mouth. But he got sick. He actually got pneumonia, and then he ended up having to have antibiotics. And he got well, and then it was all great, right? If you're looking at a disease-focused model, that would be a total win. But for me, I was like, this is the beginning of a journey, because if he didn't have the antibiotics, maybe he would have got more sick, maybe he would have died or had some permanent injuries. So I'm like, this is great, but this is terrible. Why did his system fail? It's like that plant that didn't have something and started getting super sick. It's like, what's going on? And so we started doing some more analysis. We did some, found out that this is a stool analysis, found out he was not absorbing fats. We also found he wasn't absorbing proteins. We looked and found out he wasn't absorbing vitamins. It's like, this is crazy. We know he's putting in his body more than anybody else, any other kid his age. He was nourishing himself, but he wasn't absorbing it. He had an intestinal problem that was causing him not to absorb the nutrients. So we started addressing that in a more specific way and was able to restore these functions, restore his absorption and his nutritional status. And you saw this picture later. So this is he and I now up hiking in the mountains. He got all better. And yeah, so now he can be super active and healthy. Parts, power, and information. He was missing the power. He was putting it in his mouth, but it wasn't getting into his bloodstream. So that was chemical. Then neurological, this is the information. We need adequate and accurate feedback. This funny word, neuroplasticity, most people have heard of that now. It's nerves changing or maturing or growing. The problem or the solution, it can be a problem if you have neuroplasticity that's in a negative thing. So a phobia is neuroplasticity. That's bad. And so we want neuroplasticity that's good. Or a child who just always have to have a certain thing a certain way, That's neuroplasticity. Any change in that, and they just can't handle it. We want to create more flexibility in the nervous system. And our brains begin from birth. They have a recipe for proper function, for all this flexibility. And as long as there's not interference in that process, then it develops great and everything's super. But what can interfere? Well, we talked about parts, power, and information. Right? And neurologically, there's feedback that goes into the brain, and this starts even before birth. You have feedback through the ocular system, the vestibular system, that's like the balance, and it can be dizziness and perception of movement in space, auditory, and then you have proprioceptive from spine, disc, muscles, and skin, this feedback. So these different feedback mechanisms help the brain to mature and develop appropriately. And if you don't get that feedback the right way, that accurate feedback, then accurate input, then you don't get proper maturation of the brain. This includes sensory reception, sensory processing, primitive reflexes. You may have heard of that. That's something that most kids should have, all kids should have, and they should integrate those primitive reflexes into the higher muscle and motor function later in their life by about a year old. And if they don't, then they're not getting that accurate feedback to their brain, and so that it can't develop properly. A really simple reflex to get an idea is a muscle stretch reflex. When you tap a tendon, it sends a signal from the muscle back to the spinal cord and then back out to the muscle and causes the muscle to contract. The same one you just stretched really quickly, it contracts. That's a simple reflex. Sensory reception is like that. The information should go to the brain. There's a proper response or proper processing and then a response if they're filtering it right. One more story. This is a lady and her family. This is Christina. This is their family. This is really interesting. I've been seeing these kids for a long time. So this is them at one point, and this is them years later. Well, an interesting thing is they all arrange themselves in the same way in the picture, not on purpose. Right? So this boy is this boy, this girl is this girl. These two were new. This boy is this boy, and this girl, this girl. That's kind of funny. So here she's going to tell her story.
My 9-year-old daughter Lizzie, we adopted her almost 2 years ago, and she had been diagnosed through the foster system with all kinds of delays. But our family had already been coming to Dr. House for a while, and once we were finalized with the adoption, we started getting to bring Lizzie as well. And Dr. House had us go through his, I don't even know what it's called. We call it brain exercises, but physical exercises that help to stimulate Lizzie's brain in different areas of function. And in the last 6 months, Lizzie has improved so much in her ability to control her emotions, express herself. Her coordination is 100 times better. 100 times better. She used to look rather silly when she was running. Scholastically, she's improved a ton when she would read. Before, she couldn't repeat a sentence, one sentence at a time. She couldn't repeat it for you. Now she's reading chapters at a time and able to summarize them. Just in so.
Whoops. I actually pushed the button. Wait, if I can get it playing again.
My 9-year-old daughter Lizzie, in her ability to, rather silly when she was running. Scholastically, she's improved a ton when she would read. Before, she couldn't repeat a sentence, one sentence at a time. She couldn't repeat it for you. Now she's reading chapters at a time and able to summarize them. Just in so many different areas, Lizzie's improved tremendously. And the only thing that really has changed has been the way that we've been working with Dr. House.
So that's pretty fun. So again, we like to see those changes in people, and it's because of specific activation of nervous system pathways that are not properly matured. So we get a proper connection, which gives us information flow, and that's critical to proper function. All right, parts, power, and information. So where is the disconnect? So we'll talk about here how the spine is a big part of that disconnect. Cerebral spinal fluid, misalignments of the upper neck. This is a picture of the brain, of course, and the upper neck is here. Can affect or cause neural or nerve compromise and contribute to cerebral spinal fluid flow obstruction. And this picture shows there's pooling of cerebral spinal fluid here, and there's a reduction of the pooling from an adjustment, improving the flow of fluid around the brain. Pretty phenomenal. Structural parts affect neurological and chemical function. What's the effect of a spinal dysfunction? So here's the picture of the head and the spine, and these upper vertebrae are super important. And when we get the vertebrae off kilter or out of place or subluxated, then it can interfere with this flow. So decreased blood flow, cerebral spinal flow, but also mechanical cord tension, increased inflammation, and interfering with nerve communication. So that's parts affecting information. Spinal dysfunction and altered sensory output. We talked about needing proper sensory input to the brain so that it can get proper maturation and output, right? So spinal dysfunction alters input to the brain. That altered input to the brain leads to plastic changes. That just means brain changes that last. And the changes can be increased or decreased input. So a decreased input or an increased input, right? We talked about that lack of filtering. If you have excess negative input, or if you don't have enough proper input, then the brain is going to have changes. And many of those are going to be bad. So what causes the subluxation or this joint problem in the spine? What is the subluxation? Well, subluxation is where you should have proper flow of information between the brain and the body. And when you have a subluxation, then that interferes with that communication between the brain and the body. Because the nerves around the spine they feed back to the brain. And so stress causes subluxation. Stress causes dysfunction in the spine. What kind of stress? Physical, chemical, and mental stress, right? Causes spinal joint problems. That causes nerve problems. And the purpose of the nervous system is to adapt to stress so you can stay healthy. So if we get a subluxation, we interfere with that proper communication, and we're more likely to have symptoms. Vertebral subluxation is a dysfunction of the spinal joint which interferes with nerve function. That's the basics. That's another story. This is a Maverick. Mom said, at 8.5 years old, Maverick would sound out letters but couldn't read whole words, and his focus wasn't good. What did he come in for originally? Well, he came to a chiropractor. So he said, Mom was like, well, maybe, he's got a hip problem. Let's see if the chiropractor can help his hip. So they came in and I helped him with his hip problem. But I said, anything else going on? They said, well, yeah, I can't read. I was like, well, that's a problem. So she said with chiropractic adjustments, he can now read books, focus more. He begged me to take him for his adjustments. He says, it feels good. I get treated as well, and I'm happy with it. Miranda. Super awesome. So correcting the nerve interference or improving the nerve flow. How do we do that? Cervical adjustments or adjustments with our hands of the neck result in parasympathetic responses. What is that? That's that rest, digest, and heal part of the nervous system we're talking about. So this is from research from Spine and the Journal of American Osteopathic Association. These are research articles that show these kind of results. Upper cervical adjustments, that's spinal manipulative therapy, enhances parasympathetic input. Greater parasympathetic response was found when stimulation was performed in the cervical and lumbar regions, right? So spinal adjustments improve parasympathetic or nervous system function. How can we check this? We can check this in our office to see how your autonomic nervous system is working. The nerve to organ function, we do this with what's called thermography. So the nerves to organ dysfunction can be evaluated by measuring skin temperature differences. So this was found in the Journal of Neurosurgery. Skin temperature differences are associated with vertebral subluxation. What is that? That's the joint not moving properly in the spine. And this asymmetry is quantifiable indicator of dysfunction. So if the temperature on one side versus the other, when we scan this, if it's not the same, there's a large imbalance, that's an indication that there is dysfunction and there's a subluxation and there is problem with the nerve to the organ function. So it's pretty cool. We can actually measure this now. This is somebody in particular we measured. This was Luke. You can see these high intensity imbalances in the upper part of the neck. These areas feed back into the brainstem, which affect sleep and attention and organ function throughout the whole body. So this was in May of 2023. And then we did treatment. We checked him again. This is August 2023. You can see there's big red bars are not there anymore. He's not out of the woods. There's still some problems, but much better than it was. And so we know that the nerves to his organs, the nerves to his brainstem are now working better. So we can actually measure it and you get to see it. More brain changes with spinal manipulation. Spinal manipulation or adjustments of the spine affect brain and autonomic nerve function. This is actually a scan of the brain showing those changes in glucose metabolism in this case. Manipulation or adjustments, there's now solid evidence that adjusting the spine changes brain function. Right? I think we've hit that hard enough, right? Changes that we see in the brain when we adjust the spine occur in the prefrontal cortex. In this case, it's part of the brain up here in the front, which is the attention and focus and planning part of your brain. This is what is not working in kids with ADHD. So Luke, we saw his scan earlier. Luke was, this is what Mom said, Luke was 5 years old when he started having these locking up seizures. This is how it came down. So Mom, she was in, I think it was the grocery store, and she looks up and she sees some balloons up there. And she says, hey, Luke, check that out. There's some balloons up there. And so Luke back there, he's like, getting the screen here. So he looks up and he's like, oh, that's cool. And Mom looks back. She's like, what are you doing? He's like, well, I'm looking at the balloons. She's like, well, why aren't you using your neck? He said, I can't. He's 5 years old and he couldn't use his neck. That was scary. And so this went on for a while, sometimes for minutes, sometimes all day long. He would have these locking up seizure-like disorder. And so they saw a pediatrician. They went to Valley Children's. They saw a neurologist. They did a CAT scan. They did an EEG. They were going to do an MRI, but they'd have to knock him out for 30 minutes because you're not going to get a 5-year-old to sit still. And so they couldn't find any, there was no answers. Nobody could tell them what was wrong. There's no, what are they looking for? They're looking for infection, disease, and trauma. And there wasn't any. And so they're like, well, he's fine. But parents were like, no, he's not fine. Like, well, he was fine as it related to infection, disease, and trauma. So we saw him, and we didn't actually have our scanning technology initially, but we ended up scanning him. These are some of his scans. We can tell there's things that are definitely not right. This is the way it should look, and this is the way he did look. And Mom said, now this September will be a full year of no seizing lockups. I've known chiropractors to be doctors of bones and joints, but I had no idea they did so much and how important adjustments are. So was this his spine? Was it his brain? Was it his nervous system? What did we correct?
All of it.
All of it. You guys are so good. That was a trick question. Okay. So I adjusted his spine, but that improved his nervous system function, which improved his brain function, which then controlled his body, and he wasn't having these lock-up seizures anymore. This is Luke with his baseball trophy, our soccer trophy, and his soccer outfit, and he and I in the office. He has a hard time wiping that smile off his face. He is super happy. Can you imagine what Luke's life would have been like if he didn't get treated by us? If he continued to have those seizures, they weren't real seizures, right? But kind of seizures. If he couldn't play his sports, which he obviously loves, what would he spend his time doing, or what would he spend his time being mad about? And we see what happens with kids when they can't express themselves in positive ways. Where would Luke be? So the cause of nerve interference, part of it is these vertebral subluxations in the spine. It's really powerful if you can improve. Remember, this is the skull, this is the spine. If you can improve those subluxations, we get the nerves to the brain working better, and then the brain has a chance because it gets that accurate feedback, and then it can have an accurate response. So stress, whether it's physical, chemical, mental, that causes subluxation. So we also want to address these things. That's why we do different lab testing. And that's why we look at, stresses, mental stresses, and we look at nutritional deficiencies. So how common are vertebral subluxations? If it's new to you, it's like, well, what's up with that? 1,000 infants were checked in the first month of life. 80% were found to have vertebral misalignment of the upper neck. That's a lot. Well, let's think about this for a moment. So a baby weighs maybe 7 or 8 pounds, right? So if you take the baby, and the head is super huge, right? This big old, so, and that's maybe 2 pounds, right? Just the head. So the rest of the body is maybe 5 or 6 pounds. And let's say you take the baby and you hold them gently by their head and you let their body dangle. Well, you wouldn't do that because that's stupid, right? But that's 5 or 6 pounds of force stretching on the neck. What amount is used to deliver a baby? I can tell you it's a lot more than that. So it's 2, 3, or 4 times that much. So 10 or 15, 20 pounds maybe. And I thought C-sections were actually really gentle on the baby until just 6 months ago or so. And I found that it's not super gentle on the baby. Of course, it's not gentle on the mom, but there's a lot of force, often even more force used in a C-section to remove the baby than there is in a vaginal delivery. So let's imagine you had 15 pounds of force on the neck. Well, that's like taking that baby, holding it by the head. You've got 5 pounds weighing down, and now you tie a 10-pound weight to their legs, and you're still holding them like that. Well, you wouldn't do that. You get taken to jail for doing that, right? Well, that is the delivery process. Now, babies are super resilient, and they heal well, and they can handle this often, and so it's okay. Usually, at least it's not. They're not severely damaged. But do you think it causes subluxations in the spine? Well, of course it does, super often. And when they were evaluated, they found that 80% of the time there was some kind of misalignment. Another study, 1,250 infants were evaluated during the first 5 days of life. 90% had suffered birth trauma and strain of the neck. 10% had severe trauma. Now, why is this not found? So why aren't pediatricians looking for these problems? Aren't they evaluating the baby after it's delivered? So they are evaluating the baby, right? And they know what they're doing. So why aren't they finding these subluxations?
Checking the basics, breathing, body parts.
Yeah, so they're checking the body parts, right? It's like, is everything there? Is there any bad bleeding? Is there basic functions? Okay, your baby's going to make it. Right? And that's good. You want somebody who's going to be able to evaluate it like that. But they're not looking to see if there's a subluxation in the neck. So, a baby who doesn't turn his head, you're noticing the baby's not turning his head all the way to one side, turns his head to the other side, but not to one side. That's a subluxation. You're seeing a subluxation. And that's what we correct with adjustments. If there's colic, if there's intestinal problems, if there's difficulty latching, all these can be signs of subluxation. And then later, more neurodevelopmental issues. Now, adjustments with chiropractic do have side effects. Here are some of the side effects. Improvements in autonomic function, endocrine function, heart function, immune function, muscle strength, overall athletic ability. Wait, I thought you said side effects. Well, these are positive side effects, right? Reaction time, neurocognitive functions, that's like memory and thinking, information processing, visual acuity. Why do we have all these side benefits of chiropractic adjustments? What's happening in the body that causes these side effects? And this, by the way, were asymptomatic subjects. These people were people without pain or really any significant problem they were aware of. How does that happen? What does an adjustment do?
Fixes the whole body.
Fixes the whole body. So how does it do that?
Flowing to your brain.
Gets blood flowing to the brain, improves CSF flow, improve nerve feedback, right? And then what does the brain do with proper information? It processes it and then properly controls the body, including autonomic nervous system function, which does the organs, etc. That's how it works. So what does the session look like in our office? So we might do some, just Anna today was doing some neurological rehabilitative work with the child. Laser, she's also using laser, low-level light therapy, which has these effects on the brain function. And we'll do chiropractic adjustments as well. This is another study that came out. This was done by Harvard. A recent study of Harvard Medical School has found long-lasting solution for attention. They independently verified the specific brain balancing method that we use for ADHD, autism, and learning disabilities. So just to give you a quick view of what this research showed, there's pre, post, and then 7 months afterwards. So this is where when they were doing a certain behavior, was the child attentive? If they were attentive, it's green. Well, the first test, there was not much attention. This is impulsive, distracted, and disengaged. There's a lot more of that, especially the disengaged and impulsive. Post, so after the treatment was done, there was a lot of attention and a little bit of impulsive, but not any distracted and very little disengaged. And then 7 months afterwards, still a lot of attentive and just a little bit of impulsive. Nothing compared to what it was going on before. And still almost no distracted and no disengaged for 15 minutes. So it's super cool. So Harvard showed this recently. That was pretty interesting. So specific activation to nerve pathways, that's what they did in the study, and that's what resulted in this improved brain function. So what's the impact of specific neurological rehabilitation? Significant reliable change in the emotionality, reading, writing, behavior, academic engagement, motor skills, and social communication after 3 months of brain-based, region-specific sensory and motor therapy. Another awesome research from 2023 showing that what we do in our office works because we're improving brain function. What does the session look like? So this is me doing an adjustment on a baby. And the baby's sleeping through this. Baby adjustments are super gentle. That's it. I'm actually doing the adjustment right now. So I'll show this one as well. This is me working on a little older girl.
You hit your head or something?
Sorry, I'm still here, but so we can get this working again.
All right, so we check you out, see how it's going. Should I check out your stuffed animal too? All right, put her up here.
She's one of our favorite patients.
Okay, let's see. Is this a little pig?
Not the elephant, the girl.
All right, now let's put her on. I think the arm just needs a little massage in the shoulder. Can you help me out with that? Okay, let's see how she's doing. I think she's better.
It's a pig, huh? Well, look at his colors. I couldn't tell.
Your turn. There you go. Face the clouds. Nice little heart. Yeah, there's a problem right there. I'll do that just right. Just relax, yeah? Put your hands right over there. Right. And 1, 2, 3. There you go. That's better.
All right. And then she wanted me to check out her elbow. All right. So one last story of improved brain function and hope restored. And then we're going to wrap it up.
I'm Cynthia Marinos, and this is my daughter Christine. Christine is 11. About a year and a half ago, Christine suffered a concussion, a major concussion. She was in a bike accident, and although she had no visible signs of damage on the exterior of her body, we noticed things that were not functioning afterwards. Do you remember any of those things?
Like I did not remember how to put on my belt, and I couldn't remember any of my math problems, so I had to restart with subtraction and addition.
Yeah. So we were told by the doctors to let her ease off schoolwork for about a year, because that's how long it can take for a brain injury to heal, and then introduce math and other things again. So that's what we did. After the year, and we were beginning to introduce schoolwork, and she was going to school, we noticed that there was an inability to do certain things. There was an inability to follow sequential instructions. She could follow the first instruction, but if there were 2 or 3 things to do, she actually wouldn't remember it, or just plain couldn't do it. She had trouble with balance. We had multiple accidents over issues, and I thought it was just clumsiness. Running into the door, having to do tripping. Some of these are standard things that every child has, but this was more. Breaking her wrist because she was walking on a flat surface and fell. Over and over again. So no body spatial awareness consistently. I initially really thought, I'm just being an over cautious mom. My child's not performing the way I think she should. She's being more emotional. That might just be her age. Maybe she just needs to listen better. And I waited, thinking this is just normal. But then there were things that really caught my attention, and one of those was the sequential instructions, being so clumsy, and having this distraught reaction to things that were not, really shouldn't be such a stressful thing. Now, I didn't notice this, but when we finally came to Dr. Hobbs, and he tested her walking, she didn't work with any arm swing, 0. And she swayed side to side. And this kind of tied in with what we had noticed in the running. So that was a big signal to me that we were kind of on the right track. And anytime she was in a stressful situation, like school, where they're doing memorization and kids are throwing out answers, and it came to her, she was, it's like a panic attack. Heart racing, out of control. You actually couldn't do anything. Breaking into tears over things that don't really matter in the long run. But that racing, the heart racing out of control was something she actually did not have control over at that point. And that became a very large issue in interaction in school. And I was actually a little scared because of your athletic events, if that would be a problem. Anything else that you think? How are you now?
A lot better.
Yeah, do you fly off with emotions so much? No, the emotional thing is huge. That she is not so sensitive and reacting with such exaggeration of emotion. Now, teenagers, and she's a preteen, that can happen, but this was way beyond the norm. So that's really calmed down. She was able to participate in a choir, get up in front of everybody. She was very stressed to start with. So we've been very happy with the progress. It's been a long road. And I'm very thankful that we were able to participate in this program. I feel like, and I come from a Christian perspective, that this was God's leading, and that there is an ability to heal. You just have to know what path to take and be willing to work at it. After treatment began, Christine was able to complete or do the following things. She was able to follow sequential instructions, balance on one leg, mirror another person's movements, keep the beat in music, walk with an.
All right. Let's finish that off.
I'm Cynthia Marino, and this is my daughter Christine.
She was just talking about
music.
her improvements.
Walk with an appropriate arm swing and without side-to-side motion. Discern directional spinning with her eyes closed. Focus with background noise. Discern her body position in her surroundings. Control her emotions. Lower her stress level. Her heart rate was no longer racing out of control. She had improved muscle tone and coordination, able to study without significant eye strain, and ability to relearn her math facts and retain material. So that's a very big deal.
So she waited a year to wait for these things just to recover. The doctor said, oh, it may take a year, and that's true, it may take a year, but without the proper support, without the proper power and information being restored, then she wasn't able to recover. So after a year, she was like, I still don't have any of these functions. So fortunately, we were able to get those back for her. Okay, so what do we do in our office? If you were to come in and evaluate, so we start with a history, we check your symptoms, and we talk about trauma, treatment recovery, structural, chemical, mental, things you may have tried before and things that happened before. Spinal motion palpation and nervous system scans to detect nerve interference. All right, we'll check for that. Part 2, structural and neurological testing. We look for autonomic nervous system health. We measure the heart rate variability. Computerized balance evaluation for many people. We look for vestibular, auditory, fine motor skills, eye movement accuracy, coordination, balance, core stability, primitive reflexes. We do a really thorough evaluation. This usually takes a couple days. We'll check for posture, gait, and we may do x-ray if it's needed. Next, we review those findings, and we do a therapeutic trial. And we see, okay, how well is your body going to respond? And then we're able to come up with a good plan. And then that plan may include checking for deficiencies, toxicities, leaky gut, find out chemically, do you have the right power for your body to function? So typically this is the $375 evaluation, which is actually quite a value. But for this presentation, for the next 2 weeks, I will allow people to call in and get this price, $145. So 2 weeks from now. So today is the 23rd. So that'll be the 37th. You can call up until the 37th. So whatever 2 weeks from the 23rd of October 2025 is. Yeah, I'll let you guys figure that out. If you're a day late, we might still let you in. Okay. All right. So seminar price, so $145. All right. And we'll actually do the whole family for $275. So if you're like, one time we had somebody say, well, what's your limit? I was like, well, how many you got? And they said, well, I have 7 kids. I said, today the limit is 7. So they all got in for $275 for the whole family. It does not include the lab testing, though. All right, so yeah, this is the lab testing, some of the testing we might do, some of the results. So this opportunity, you'll get the first visit, and that'll be an extra in-depth neurodevelopmental sensor motor exam. How much does it cost? We just talked about that. We're holding a few spots, so we got 2 weeks. We keep some spots available for people so we can get them in for times like this because we know. And the reason we allow it for the whole family is because we know it's not just the child that's stressed, has their physical, chemical, mental stresses. It's the whole family. We want everyone to get better. So how often do we treat? And how much does the whole thing cost? So we often will start out with 2 or 3 times a week of this neurological rehabilitation exercises. We try to make it pretty fun. And we'll also do adjustments. So we go at first, we'll go 2 or 3 times a week, and then we go down to 1 to twice a week, and then we might go to every other week. And this goes on for 3 to 4 months, and often people continue for a year or more because they continue to get improvements. But we decrease in the amount of frequency of treatments, and we allow more stuff you can just do at home or you're just better and you don't have to do extra stuff. You just start living life. We're not in network with any insurances except for Medicare and VA, and so that would not apply. If you have any questions, then feel free to call us or text us. We'd love to answer any questions you have. You'll need to watch this video a few times to get this information. But thank you for taking the time to sit here and watch this, and I hope it makes a change in your life and your family's life. Right? Thanks, and have a wonderful day. Any other questions we had online we need to address before we go? Okay. All right.